There's an old saying from the northern heartlands of the northern industrial part of Britain, where there's muck, there's brass. Closer at home, we've heard politicians talk about the smell of money when they describe the odor from pulp mills. Here in Nelson at budget time, there's precious little muck to help us fill the coffers, and the springtime air is more likely to smell of japonica or cottonwood, certainly not the smell of money. In the grips of, the 22nd recession since the Great Depression, and some are calling it the worst, governments at all levels are preoccupied with the management of deficits, and they're moving to increase revenues, taxes, and reduce expenditures, services. And this is done primarily as a job of the politicians, with a little help from their mandarins. And the constraint of democracy requires that they do this in a way that their constituents will remember gratefully at the next election. Tonight on Nightline, Murray Zaitlin and Marianne will be talking to some Nelson politicians and mandarins who have recently been playing this delicate balancing game.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Nelson Nightline, Shaw Cable's live bi-monthly phone-in talk show. I'm Morrie Zaitlin, and I'm your show's co-host tonight, along with Marianne. On tonight's show, you will have the opportunity to query Mayor Bill Ramsden and City Treasurer Lloyd Moseley about the city's 1992 tax budget and how municipal dollars will be spent. The phone lines are now open, and we'd like to hear from you, the viewers, right away. The number to call is 354-4200. But before we start, I'd like to welcome Mayor Ramsden and Treasurer Moseley and my co-host Marianne. Good evening, both of you.
It's a pleasure to be here, especially with that famous introduction.
Well, a little bit dramatic, but it was good. Well, Marianne, I guess you wanted to start with a quick question.
Yes, I was wondering, you've just been deliberating last Saturday, I understand, on your 1992 budget. I think the question in everybody's mind, is there going to be an increase, and if so, can you tell us how much?
Marianne, are you talking about an increase in taxes?
Yes.
Most definitely. There will be an increase in taxes, but that bylaw won't be passed. What do we get, 3 readings Monday?
3 readings Monday, and the tax rate bylaw will be going the next week, or Tuesday afternoon actually, at LVR.
So council has to deliberate when it comes to readings to finalize this, but yes, there will be an increase.
Can you give us any indication of how much?
In dollars or in percentage?
Percentage.
Percentage. Correct me, Mr. Moseley, the treasurer, but I believe it'll be 7%.
For municipal purposes, the taxes will be increasing 7%. We do not have the school figures yet. We anticipate that to be about 3, although we do not know. And the regional district portion is going up about 12.5%. Does
that reflect back on the provincial budget as well?
Well, certainly out of that 7%, almost 3 of it is a direct result of the provincial problem and their restriction in sending the money to municipalities.
Can you
Go ahead. Provincial per capita grant is down from last year's and down further than what we anticipated. That has a major impact on what we're doing.
How do you go through the process? I understand there's committees, each councillor is on a committee, whether it's police department, fire department, etc. What is the process that you go through before you come to next week's council meeting to decide on your budget?
Well, every department head who is responsible for their department budget deals with the treasurer on a day-to-day basis on their annual budget. Once the budget's passed, they're dealing with it. When we're ready to start looking at the coming year's budget, which is usually by September, October, each alderman in charge of that department meets with the department heads and then with the treasurer. We started budget deliberations about October. We've been through that to get a provisional budget passed. The provisional budget was based on what we anticipated getting as a per capita grant, what our anticipated revenues would be. As it's turned out, the revenues that we are getting are what we budgeted for, except for the per capita grant. And each alderman at each department head have met continuously for the last 5 months with the treasurer. The treasurer's met with myself and the administrator, and we came to what we thought were amounts we could take to a day's deliberations, which was this past Saturday.
That was the all-day.
The all-day meeting to
go
try
through
and
everything.
to do it line by line and get rid of what we could or add to or take away.
Now, you sent out a questionnaire, about 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, to get some feedback from the population. What sort of feedback did you get, and how did that come into play in your deliberations?
Well, I don't remember the exact amount we sent out, but we had what we felt was a great response. 661 returns, somewhere in there, which is far more than we thought we'd get. And percentage-wise, probably better than 15%. It had a lot to do with what we deliberated on Saturday because the views of the public were there and we had them all compiled and collated so we could review them. We spent the first hour and a half on Saturday really deliberating those items that the public had pointed out. The citizens in Nelson were very concerned about certain items, and we did deal with it as much as we could.
For instance, what were the main comments that people had that you had to look at?
Well, things like, are you going to keep funding certain agencies? We want you to keep our garbage the way it is, our collection system. Would you change from city police to RCMP? Those were kinds of negative sort of things that people felt. On the positive, they were very happy with the route we're going. It indicated some ideas, I think, to department heads and to council that we could do in the coming year and make things better.
This is the first time a council has sent out a questionnaire like that,
I
is
guess
it
the
not?
first time we've had the nerve to do it, because when you do something like that, you're taking a chance that you're going to hear from the people who are going to blast you no matter what. And I would say from the 661, probably better than 75% were positive. There was some negatives, definitely, and we expected that.
And the response, I think, indicates that there is a positive reaction to that kind of process within the community.
I think more often I got compliments on the fact that council saw fit to do this and involve the general public who, for one reason or other, are not able to come to city council meetings and don't maybe read the paper or watch the television or read or listen to the radio. They at least had a chance to say things, and they were anonymous, so it's easier.
Now, we're talking about roughly $20 million is the yearly budget, give or take a couple $100,000, I guess. That's the number?
That's the number, yes.
How does that break down? In the letter that you sent out, you had it in percentages. I'm wondering if maybe, Lloyd, I could just ask you briefly to break that down instead of percentages, but by dollar figures to give people a little bit better handle on that.
The figure that was in the questionnaire, Morrie, was only involved the general operating fund, as well as the general operating. There's also 4 utilities which are ran by the city, and the 4 utilities, particularly the electrical, is a very significant part of the overall budget. So out of $20.5 million, the utilities make up almost $800,000.
The utilities being lights, electric, sewage,
Water,
Transit.
and transit.
and transit, the city,
Right.
BC buses.
Right.
BC Transit. That's
right.
So if you can just briefly for our viewers, break them down that way.
Okay. Well, first of all, then the utilities, the water and sewer utilities for operation for the water utilities, $325,000. There's approximately an additional $700,000 of capital expenditures or improvements which are going to be done. And the sewer utility is $470,000, and there's approximately $600,000 of capital improvements in addition to the operating. The transit utility operation is $598,000, almost $600,000, and that is the overall transit utility because the city is the operator of the transit system, right from Queens Bay through to the city. General government, which is the administration of the city and the general operations for our discretionary expenditures, I guess, of council for such things as publicity and donations, is about $992,000. Actually, on Saturday, council did cut $36,000 out of that section. Protective services, which is the police, the fire, building inspection, and animal control, is about $2,750,000. Transportation services, which is your streets and roads, or as many people consider the basics operating the municipality, is $2.5 million. Environmental health and public health, that's garbage collection and cemetery services. That's a little over $1 million. There's other. Sorry, I don't have all these figures completely memorized.
1.3.
1.3, but
What were you looking for?
I'm just looking for where that figure comes from, because there's.
I think the other main one, Lloyd, is the recreation and cultural
Yes.
services.
And recreation and cultural services is in that as well. And then the other is the debt services for all, and that's 1.3 million. Or 1,035,000, I'm sorry. Out of the, for environment, public health, and recreation is $900,000 of that.
You mentioned capital expenditures. What capital projects or major capital projects for 1992 are planned?
Well, I guess the main one is the completion of the police library facility. The other one is the extension of the North Shore sewer system. There are numerous water main replacements and that a lot, which are currently going on.
Cooney Street.
And the Public Works.
Public Works Department has got capital works to do.
What's the purpose of taking the North Shore into Nelson?
Well, we were petitioned by landowners, business people on the immediate North Shore at the bridge. Environmental and health of the provincial government ministries were very close to forcing those businesses to either shut down or put in their own sewage treatment plants. There is a lot of problem along the North Shore with sewage leaking into our lake, which does impact on the lake at Nelson's side. And the Ministry of Health was having a lot of problems helping those people solve the problem. Their advice was to those people to come into the city, hook up to our sewage treatment plant. They petitioned to come in. Municipal Affairs accepted that petition, and so did the city. So our major funding for that has come direct from the provincial government. The balance, and Lloyd would have to give me the numbers, is being picked up by those landowners on a payback of
20 years.
20 years.
Over
20 years.
The city itself won't be in reality paying for it.
Well, we're paying it now, but they're paying us back on a 20-year basis. So in planning for this, we did not make the pipeline just to fit those 5 new properties that came in. We made it much larger, so the capacity, and we're getting a lot of interest from other people on that immediate part of the North Shore to come in. So if the government in its wisdom pushes for that, the city did not ask them to come in. They petitioned us. It's probably a good move for them, and certainly it adds land base to the city and eventually a tax base and return of taxes when you've got several major businesses that are there that have come in.
The motels across.
Yeah, the Villa Motel, the North Shore Inn, the transmission place, and some private property.
You're saying others where, along Johnson Road or?
Immediately to where the North Shore Inn is, there's been people expressing, and we've had to turn down because their property can't come in under the present bylaws. And they don't fit, and there has to be some changes made there.
Okay.
That's a political decision too, as well, from the provincial government as part of municipal affairs.
The only thing I might add, Mr. Mayor, is that the system was designed for capacity of approximately 2,000 people. So it does have significant capacity for future growth.
So it does put us into the future and not just answer the immediate problem.
Good move. Lloyd, you mentioned the $1 million budget for environment and public health. Part of that is the garbage collection, or the garbage.
It's 1,000,003, but that's environment, public health, and recreation.
And that Nelson, I understand, is one of the few communities that does not levy a separate fee for garbage collection.
We're in the lower, one of the few that are left. Yes, there's probably less than 25% of the people, municipalities, that do not levy garbage collection fees anymore.
As a separate fee.
Did I read in the paper, though, that there is some plans underway to maybe start doing something different in terms of our garbage collection with levying a cost on a per bag or?
There's been several proposals come before council, and to date none of them have been accepted or approved. The concept is that eventually, to keep our costs down, it's like a user fee. There's lots of different systems, and the last one that came before council wasn't accepted as a total package, and we reviewed it on Saturday and elected, I believe, I'm right, not to impose that fee this year. It's a way that we can also, if we do implement a garbage fee, absorb some of the costs that it takes. I would be the first to say that I think we have probably one of the more, for a community our size, one of the more efficient garbage pickups. I look at other communities around about us. I've gone and looked at their systems. Some of them have contracted out and got it away from their city. They're not near as efficient, and it costs them as much or more than what's costing the citizens in Nelson to operate a garbage function.
But certainly a user fee would certainly help to promote with recycling and whatnot, recycling efforts by the community as well.
Yes, it would in the long run, yeah.
But does not recycling mean losing money? I understand Time magazine not too long ago had an article saying that a lot of major cities have stopped recycling because there's nobody buying the product.
Well, it's a problem that's come up. A lot of major cities went to the blue box system and have gone away from it because it's so costly to do. We have a recycling depot here that we're asking people to use in function with the regional district. It's not costing us a lot of money as taxpayers to use that system. It's finding the people and convincing people to use that system would certainly cut down on our garbage amount that we're picking up.
That $20 million, is that a deficit budget, or it's a break-even budget?
Municipalities are not allowed to operate on a deficit basis until
So
illegal.
20 million in, 20 million out, give or take.
Right. We are allowed to borrow funds for capital improvements, but that's the only thing you're allowed to borrow money for.
I guess as a politician, as people say we are, as a mayor and alderman, that's one of the pet peeves I have, is that we have to, by legislation, run a balanced budget. We cannot convince provincial or federal governments that they have to do the same. The system being a little different, but whenever we go to UBCM or we go to municipal affairs, I never fail to bring that up, that you keep cutting us off and they're downloading the responsibilities from them to us and making it more difficult every year to maintain a balanced budget. And the treasurer has sleepless nights near the end of the year when council has not been as fiscally responsible in looking at the budget where it is, when he has a few $1,000s left in his contingency budget to balance. We have a sudden snowfall at the end of the year, we're in trouble.
Oh, we're lucky this year, I guess, with the warm winter then. You could sleep a little easier.
A little easier.
Well, actually, our budget year is from January the 1st through to December 31st. So our snow clearing budget last year was right on budget, but to help the council out this year, we were able to trim another $75,000 off the existing snow clearing budget because it was so mild in January and February.
Which leads me to a very good question. What else has been, or will potentially be cut? What do you see as budget cuts to balance this budget? You're not bringing in as much as expected, obviously, with the provincial cutbacks.
Well, council has made some, what we probably consider some major cuts to department budgets. We did those on Saturday, and then at the end of the day, right across each department, we asked for another $5,000 from each department. Besides, we've, much to my dismay, have had to increase the taxes to accommodate the rest of what we can't find, because directly of the change in what per capita grant we get from the provincial government. We've had an increase in staff wages this year, which were collective agreements, were 2-year agreements, which affects the budget. We have to cover those, and we have reached an agreement where we're not doing layoffs, we're not downsizing services. We are actually cutting some of our major grants by some amounts. And we've asked each department to trim in their budgets, which they did, and we trimmed them down a lot and then asked for more at the end of Saturday.
This would be like grants and aid that you give out at regular council meetings to different groups and organizations?
I think you'll find that the city's portion of the grant and aid will be 0 this year.
Really? Yes. Well, how many city staff are there?
Total?
Yeah.
I think we got a total here somewhere, Lloyd.
141 at this time.
141, and what is their wages then for as part of the city budget?
Wages and benefits, including all, is approximately $7.5 million.
$7.5 million. How much is that per person there?
Well, get your calculator out. You know, something to point out to people is, and Lloyd brought this out to us in our budget, we have 141 people working for the city of Nelson. It's a major contributor to the economy of the city, just in that payroll. However, in 1982, we had 157 people employed by the city. And I think 10 years before that, we had more people than that, in the 70s.
Certainly in the 60s.
60s, where we're far
So
greater
are we
staff.
doing more with less?
I think we have accomplished that over the last, since the 83 recession, we started downsizing city staff.
Building permits for 1991 were approximately 10 million, which was up 4 million from the previous year. That's quite a sizable increase, and a recent article in the paper, we're on target with last year, up to the end of March, if not a little bit more. What were the major projects that would account for that $4 million increase last year?
Well, the police library building permit was
Police
taken
library,
out.
that was at the end of the year.
That was
There's
right,
also housing starts were very significantly increased.
Great increase in
There's also,
private homes.
Right. There's also the housing project up in Rosemont, which is another
seniors.
major-
The seniors 22-unit apartment, the 18 low-cost homes.
And the development top of Latimer?
That was part of the private homes, yeah, and that was one phase of that is finished. They should be on the second phase. We had some condominium types townhouses built over in Fairview, which added to it by several million. There was a lot of renovations in town which do add to those building statistics. Private homeowners and businesses such as the Lord Nelson Hotel was a major contributor with their painting and their canopies and remodeling. A lot of those sort of things. Sprucing up accounts for a lot of that. But if you look back at our building of new homes, how many did we have in March? Permits taken out? 14?
14, right.
In the time of 83 to 86, it was one new home permit taken out. But that adds a problem to us. It costs us. It doesn't just create revenue. Those new homes being built, we don't see the revenue till the next year.
You have to
So
provide sewer
services
electric
and
stuff
that.
like that to them.
Right.
Well, we're going to open the phone lines. The phone number is 354-4200. You have the Mayor Bill Ramsden, City Treasurer Lloyd Moseley here to ask questions about taxes. Taxes are going to go up 7% this year at least, and that's the city portion. RDCK and school taxes will likely go up too, so here's your opportunity to find out why. If you have a call in. Which departments do you figure are costing the most to operate? I know your police obviously is going to cost more with the new building, and part of the library is in your budget. Administration, is there any other?
Well, the budget for police and fire, for instance, is 88% is payroll. When you talk about public works, it's not payroll as much. In dollars and cents, we have a lot of other items that cost, and those are items that can go up in cost constantly, and they are a major part of our budget. Equipment is a major part of our annual purchases. We have a reserve fund to buy equipment from, which doesn't affect really our tax base because we have a way of keeping that in reserve and buying and replenishing it. But certainly there's departments that are more costly to run, if that's what you're looking for. And when you have a good protective service like we have in the police and the fire service, that's payroll costs, and they're very expensive that way.
I noticed in the budget numbers that you gave us, the ambulance department is up 15.7%. I'm curious with that one, considering that I thought BC Ambulance Service was taking over the ambulances.
Actually, those were the provisional
That was
figures.
provisional before.
That was before that. That was so we were estimating a 15.7% increase in the cost before the ambulance service actually got into the picture.
I guess that's when we were in the hopes of retaining our ambulance service and improving. We were potentially adding one more person to staff.
That was when council, correct, adopted the policy of having 3-man shifts on at all times. The actual cost this year for the ambulances,
For the fire department, we're not ambulances.
right, but was 161,000. That included a termination, and that's less than half of what it was last year.
My
for the
understand.
ambulances gone.
Sorry, Lloyd. My understanding is that for the RCMP to administer the policing within the city would actually cost more, although I think people are under the impression it would reduce costs.
Well,
And either one of you.
We get a grant from the provincial government now to subsidize the municipal police forces in British Columbia that are their own municipal, to bring us up to the same basis on which federally run police forces in the share with the provincial government, federal and the cities. What people don't recognize or understand for the most part is that if we did have RCMP, we would have to provide the building just as we do for our own police. We'd have to provide the vehicles and their salaries, and it's the same. The Attorney General and the federal government have an agreement standing way back that if you have a municipal police force, are not going to change us to RCMP.
We have our first caller. Good evening, Nelson Nightline. You're on the air.
Good evening. My question is this. Last year with the home ownership grant, my taxes were $350. Since we don't have that this year, can you give me approximate what I would be paying this year?
Thank you.
Thank you.
His taxes were $350. So he's losing the supplemental. Does he get a supplemental at that rate?
Yes, you would have.
It'd be easier if we knew the gentleman's assessment, I guess, for Lloyd to give him an answer.
Maybe we can move on to another question
While
while
Lloyd
Lloyd
looks.
is
Yes, go ahead.
looking
Okay.
for that.
Lloyd will try to answer. You can figure that out pretty quick.
How do we?
350 net.
Yeah, that's what he said.
His taxes this year should be very close to what, if he's a senior citizen, his taxes will be approximately $30 greater this year.
We have another caller. Good evening, Nelson Nightline.
Hi. I was just wondering, you mentioned that the taxes are going to go up about 7% this year.
Yes?
Okay, the recent wage settlements are, well below that now, and cost of living is down below that. And I was just wondering, is the city going to do something about bringing that in line with the rate of inflation and the set wage settlements that are happening now?
Thank you. I think you addressed that before. It's
Well,
not really seven.
and as far as the city's wage settlements, they were 2-year agreements made in 1991. And Lloyd would have to correct me, but I believe this year they amount to approximately 7%, 7.1 or 6.9. We settled those agreements in 1991, so we're having to pay those now. The inflation costs, I don't think have affected our budget very much. Lloyd, you'd have to tell me. It's the cost of purchasing materials that would be, and services that we don't have of our own.
Material costs have gone up somewhat, although more in line with inflation, except if you look at matters such as electrical purchases, which have gone up over 11%.
We're talking about electrical power purchases.
Purchases.
We have to buy power from West Kootenay when we're at a downtime in the winter. West Kootenay has to buy from BC Hydro. BC Hydro's up their rates considerably to West Kootenay, who have upped their rates, so we're paying that inflated rate.
Well, we're going to cut for our man in the street interviews, I think, right now. Thank you very much for the first bit. We'll get back to you in a couple of minutes. Welcome to Nelson Nightline. We're just going to cut to the street interviews right now.
Tax money, I think, should be appropriated and put into places like providing more parking for people downtown. Other than that, parking is pretty well my only beef in Nelson. I think the other part of the taxes is handled quite well as far as I'm concerned.
It'll be my first year in Nelson paying taxes, so I have nothing really to compare it to.
Okay.
Some of the roads on the uphill I would like to see improved.
Some of the roads in the uphill?
Yes.
Yeah.
Quit taxing the hell out of us.
I think they're doing a good job.
Have you got a message for the city when they're deliberating and bringing their taxes in this year?
Well, no, I've heard property taxes are very high here, and that's about all I know.
Well, it should be based on according to your needs, or what, like if you're someone who has children, I think you should be, I don't know, assess taxes on what pertains to you as far as the children are concerned, school taxes or things like that.
So what you're saying then is it shouldn't be just based on the property you own, but on the needs that you have.
Oh, definitely. I think that's really important to do it that way, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, but it should be a majority vote on anything. It shouldn't be just where the council itself sits and, you know, has a list of taxes that they want to implement. It should be definitely communicating to the public on what they'd like to implement.
Great.
Okay.
For City Hall, well, we filled out the tax survey form that came to our house and felt that one of the best things that Nelson could do is develop the waterfront. So we would be in favor of paying more taxes if they would develop the waterfront.
Not an increase.
Being taxed too much, way too much.
Okay. And where should they cut?
Where should they cut? I don't know. They're cutting the wrong spots, that's for sure.
Okay, fine.
For the city, yeah. I mean, we need taxes to pay for all the services we want. People have to be realistic. I'm willing to pay taxes. I like to see more taxes going into education because that's what I think is the major issue. I mean, I have a little one. And that's where I want to see my tax dollar going. Most of it, of course, we need clean streets and all this kind of stuff. But
anywhere where they should cut, you think?
Well, you know, I find it difficult to estimate because to say where should they cut, I need to see the whole picture. But I don't like to see so much money going into parking facilities because I think people should walk or cycle. You know, we have to take initiative to reduce those taxes ourselves and clean up the streets ourselves. I think that would be great if people could do that.
Thank you.
And that's my message to the city.
City taxes stink.
And that's, you're going to be paying them one day.
I will? Okay, they're the best. I'll pay them.
Should direct their majority of tax funds to essential services this go around because there's a lot of needed things for the community that has to be addressed, and I know their good judgment will come forth in their assessments.
Well, you know, it's something everybody else sees. They seem to be just climbing and climbing and climbing. You know, the prices climb and climb and climb, and the wages don't climb and climb and climb. So sooner or later, you reach a point where things don't meet anymore. I really don't know what to do about that.
Please spend our money as prudently as possible, but don't cut services.
What should they do with their money?
What should they do with their money? I think that public transportation in the city would be really good. I also think that a parking program for people who live out of town should have a good central place to park, and people who live in town shouldn't be allowed to park their vehicles in the downtown area. They should walk unless they get some kind of a permit, like if they're an elderly person who's not going to be able to walk more capably.
Well, small business, I think, are having a difficult time, I'm sure, making ends meet. I don't think people are aware of the number of hours that small business people put in trying to make a go of it. And I think they should be considered, in all this.
So how would that consideration come? You think through the Chamber of Commerce or...
Well, I don't have any answers there. I think that they're quite a bit different than salaried people. They have to meet their payrolls, and sometimes people are not aware of how difficult that is.
Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
But we do have to pay $35 to utilize the library.
Talk about that. What do you think about that?
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
So it doesn't come out of our taxes to the city, and it needs to be paid for, so that's fine.
So you don't object to paying extra for services that the city pays for?
Well, if we're not contributing to the city coffers in the same way, then I guess we're obliged to do that. It'd be nice if it was free, but if not.
Well, I don't mind them raising taxes if they put it to a good, some kind of a good city project, that they need. They need some new roads and stuff, so I guess that costs money, so they'll probably have to raise the taxes up a bit for that. We're living out the North Shore. We don't pay the city taxes, but we do pay for some of the use of the cities, the library and stuff like that. I suppose we'll be paying for that. But
where would you see anywhere they could cut?
I don't really know their budgets and that, So.
Okay.
We're in a tight situation, aren't they, this moment? I think they got very few options, probably to raise a few, I guess. And haven't they done that already? I think we're paying a little extra on there. Oh, that's from the provincial stuff that we lost, haven't we? I guess that's got to be made up. I guess they've got to try and hold the line, I guess. But I imagine a modest increase will have to happen if we don't have the same services we need. Yeah.
Do you think of anywhere they could cut?
I don't see there's a lot they could cut in the city. They're providing good value for money. I think basically the city is. I'm not aware of any of the things they sent out in that questionnaire to us that I would want to see cut particularly. And I think they're all good. Yeah. Sometimes wonder whether. No, I think in general they're good. Yeah.
Good.
I guess the message that I would have is please manage our tax dollars carefully.
I think taxes seem high, but I'm not sure they can do anything about it with the way our streets are and everything.
Good, thank you.
Good evening again, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Nelson Nightline. Our guests tonight are His Honor the Mayor, Bill Ramsden, and the City Treasurer, Lloyd Moseley. We're talking about taxes, as you just saw on our streeter with Mike Ovenell. I guess I'll just start, Mayor Ramsden, with how do we compare to other municipalities of our size as far as the percentage of residential taxes? I know you had something within your budget papers that talked about that, but just generally, where are we in relationship to other small communities, whether it's Trail, Castlegar, Prince George, or anywhere else?
Are you looking at for what percentage of taxes the resident pays?
Residential, yeah.
The resident in Nelson pays approximately 70% of all tax dollars, which is high compared to most other municipalities. In Castlegar, it's around 50%, and in Trail, it's in the 30% range. So certainly the resident in Nelson carries the burden of the taxes because there is no other tax base. If you're looking what an average taxpayer pays in Nelson, the average taxpayer in Nelson would pay approximately $1,000 net. And compared to some other municipalities, it's higher compared to, of our size, it would be one of the higher ones. If you get into larger municipalities like Kelowna or Langley, then it is lower than those. But also Nelson is a very expensive municipality to maintain because of the hills and that. Our snow clearing costs are $50 per capita if you compare it to Vancouver, which is less than $2 per capita. You compare it to Penticton, I believe, is about 12, Cranbrook's about 15, and Trail's about 35. So it is an expensive municipality to maintain because of the terrain.
Our infrastructure also is, for the majority of the part, is old, and it needs a lot of attention, which we've been putting our money towards, and it's very costly to do. Give you the example out on Ward Street here not too many years ago when we had a problem that I got up to get to the sewer line. The sewer consisted of an original Nelson sewer of wood, one of cast iron, one of ceramic, and one of plastic. all within a block. So over the last 95 years, it's been bandied together, and that's very expensive to fix properly.
We have a caller. Good evening, Nelson Nightline.
Hi, I heard that the taxes are going up, and this year with the introduction of the GST and everything else, and the wages have not been increased, how can we afford to pay all these taxes? It just seems like we're getting poorer and poorer, and yet our cost of living and our taxes are going up and up, and I can't seem to make ends meet. Why is this so?
Okay, thank you.
Well, GST is part of the reason. I guess the city pays GST too, if somebody brings that up. On our purchases of hard goods, etc., we're paying 7%. Certainly the city's costs of doing business have gone up, and I realize that everybody's in a tough position, but it's Lloyd's giving me a figure 3% relating to
GST.
GST is what we're paying.
What a municipality pays versus the 7%.
Right.
But is there no way there was no way in your deliberations of cutting it to keep it a zero tax increase by cutting anything?
Well, we would have had to cut major services, transportation, reduce the police force, reduce the fire department further, and lay off staff. We made a conscious decision not to lay off staff, because that's another problem that it creates in the city. You lay them off, it's then compounding another system within the municipality. The revenues aren't the same for the other people.
It's too bad there wasn't a way, but...
Well, Morrie, we did cut. What did we started Saturday morning in an over position of $240,000. We ended up looking for about 35 at the end of the day.
Correct.
35,000. So we asked departments to go back and find that money.
So
and reduce their budgets.
You cut it 200,000 overall, is that what you just said?
Yes.
1%.
Yeah, we cut it down to leave Mr. Moseley, the treasurer, with some contingency to run into the fall with. And if we don't spend it all, then we're better off by the fall.
We have another caller. Good evening, Nelson Nightline.
With reference to the snow removal and the amount that it costs to remove the snow, we had no snow this year. Could you kind of tell me where the funds go from the budget to, are the funds saved for next year's snow removal if they happen to be heavy? What's happened to the money that was allocated for this year's snow removal?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
$75,000 of the which was the estimated savings this year. Because we do run on a calendar year, we have no idea what October, November, or December will be as far as snowfall. But for the first 3 months, we did reduce our snow clearing budget by approximately $75,000, which council reallocated. Otherwise, they would have had to make further cuts.
We reallocated $75,000 to other departments to get them through these first 3 months of the year.
And several years ago, council did set aside approximately $60,000 in a reserve fund for whenever there is a real bad winter in November and December to assist in those matters. But
Another caller. Good evening, Nelson Nightline.
Is the city considering at all extending its boundaries to gain a broader tax base?
Thank you.
To the caller, I would say that that has been a major point of discussion with municipal affairs. And you've seen just the recent one come in from the North Shore. You'll see the golf course lands, the majority, I believe.
All of them.
If not all, yeah, all the golf course lands will be coming into the city. The city is not in a position to be able to go out and ask the immediate areas to come into the city because we know we don't have the funds to go ahead and provide the services immediately. The provincial government is looking at that system, so is the regional district. We're at a point where the provincial government has given us funds to the regional district and us to look at a restructuring of the boundaries.
Is our relationship with our regional district, is it the same within municipalities and regional districts throughout the province in terms of the amounts of funds that come in from that area?
No, they're not all the same.
So
give Trail an example. Trail's recreation facilities, their fire, their transit is all regionally supported. So they have their arena, their skating rinks, their recreation fields, all within the Trail and the regional district Kootenay boundary, and their fire protection, and their transit's all shared with the regional district. Where we don't have that other than our aquatic center.
Why is that?
Well, they've been able to negotiate that over the years with their communities and have that funds shared.
One of the reasons for that is because they have a very large industrial taxpayer.
Caminco.
Yeah. If we had a large industrial taxpayer like Trail and Castlegar have, we'd probably be able to ease the cost a lot by being able to negotiate that.
Good evening, Nelson Nightline.
Yes, I'd like to know what council is doing to bring industry into this town to help with the tax cost that is being put on the payers in this town now.
Thank you.
Well, I think that, for the caller, the person that can best answer that question is Marianne Bond, who's the executive officer of the Economic Development Commission, which the city was an initiator of, that commission, and which is a shared function of the city and the portions of Regional District ENF. That is their mandate to look at bringing industry or business to Nelson and area, and in particular Nelson.
Yes, what we've found over the past recent year or so in terms of doing a questionnaire and an extensive study of a strategy of Nelson's growth and development over the next 5 to 10 years is that the majority of residents who live here and the new ones are moving here because there is no industry or a large industrial employer like Caminco or Selgar.
That's right.
The majority of people are coming here for a quality of life. A number of people are saying they're willing to pay more taxes to enjoy the lifestyle that we have, and many people are moving here. They're bringing their own businesses with them. They're self-sustaining individuals in their own right. How that relates into the tax-based dollars, I know, is a delicate question, a delicate balance.
I think the other thing too is that in the last 2 years, Canada's lost 25% of its manufacturing jobs in 2 years. So the ability for us to attract manufacturing jobs into this area is very difficult.
But Nelson has attracted small light manufacturing, small
electronic
business.
type, clean industry has
Nelson
come here.
Brewing Company and so forth. A lot of it is very quiet. A lot of it is home-based.
Do you
but
notice?
Nonetheless, that they are here. They have come.
In your numbers, have you noticed the growth of small businesses? Has that been contributing to the tax base at all? What is their percentage?
Well, home-based businesses are a residential taxpayer, basically.
So you don't get any dollars out of that?
No. In fact, our residential building is going up faster than commercial is. But the taxes have basically not changed since the closing of KFP. And
that was our major loss in taxes was KFP.
It's been about 68% residential, and it has fluctuated about 1%. But
since that time?
Since that time.
Again, the strategy identified Nelson's continued growth and development in the education sector as the number one area of growth that most of the residents would like to develop in. CIC was certainly an added benefit to Nelson. With continued expansion or development of educational facilities, that could continue to help the city's tax base.
One of the other things, Marianne, is the provincial government has continued to increase its staffing here. We have a major new building coming on stream very soon, which will increase employment in this town with people increasing their payroll. It's a $4 million project?
The total project is closer to 6, but the building will be 4, yes.
We've got another caller. Good evening, Nelson Nightline.
Yeah, I think, like talking about raising taxes and that, I think maybe you guys should think about cutting Capitol Theatre, an art school, David Thompson University, and some of that stuff.
Well, as the caller was listening at the beginning, I said that Council in its deliberation Saturday had made major cuts to all the grants it makes. Bear in mind, we have not made a grant to Kootenay School of Art. They've never been. Capitol Theatre definitely gets a grant to operate it as a city-owned building and a function that the city supports.
Yeah, but I think, like you've got people paying $250 a month property taxes, and, at those sort of rates, I think we should be looking after our major stuff, streets, sewer, and never mind the entertainment and the culture.
Okay, thank you for your comment.
The caller will be, I understand his complaint. It's one of the things that showed up in the survey we sent out that was a contradiction. A lot of people were so much in support of Capitol Theatre, don't cut it, we got the same comments on the other side that when times are tough, cut them. And we've made major cuts to all grants.
The city's revitalization project has certainly been an added benefit for it in terms of Baker Street revitalization. I understand there are continued plans to carry that on through the Vernon and Front Street corridor. Are there definite plans for this year? And if so, does the city actually contribute money to it, or is it provincial grants and the actual business owners that would cover those costs? Or is it
I think that you'll find that money has to come from the business. It comes from the provincial government, and the city has a share. We have committees, and we are working towards phase 3. I don't have a hope that it will be done this year.
No, I think the schedule in the budget is for the plans to be completed this year, and it will depend on the businesses in that area whether they wish to see it proceed.
Certainly what the Lord Nelson has done this past year was a good start on that Vernon Street.
You know, to give people some positives, that I don't think there's a week goes by that I don't have someone phoning or coming into City Hall that's from somewhere else who is interested in building in this community. Hotels, other types of business, those sort of things, because they recognize Nelson is a great place to live, and that's why we're getting all the building that's going on. It's not just local people.
We have a city airport. It's used basically for recreational use, I believe. Maybe you can correct me on that. What does it cost to operate that airport?
Well, Morrie, Lloyd would have to give me the actual cost. It's very minimal. It definitely is for local pilots. However, air ambulance uses it probably 6 times a week.
As often as that?
Businesses such as BC Tel and Fitting Tractor use it. Canadian Helicopters has a full base there and require an airstrip to use it properly. And they generate a lot of revenue into this community. Other BC government aircraft come in here. There's other businesses who come in. Mining development exploration companies use it. Certainly it is used.
Is it a user pay?
We don't have someone paid to be down there to collect fees. It's a there is a fuel base there, and they pay for the fuel, and we actually administer that through the Pilots Association and the tie-down fees through them. They operate the piece of equipment that cleans the airstrip during the winter, which was given to us by the Minister of Transport.
The subsidy for that, I believe, is around $18,000.
That includes whatever maintenance and repairs we do.
Thank you.
The city successfully negotiated with BC Hydro, was it last year or the year before, to acquire additional water license, and that has brought additional revenue into the city as well, has it not?
It's made a big difference to the operation of the power plant and the revenues we're able to maintain, yes.
Also, council sets aside the monies from that for capital improvements, and this year it's going to be $200,000 out of that reserve, whereas there's only approximately $50,000 from taxes
to do capital
projects.
Good evening, Nelson Nightline.
Yeah, hi. Just a couple points in terms of saving money to the city. I noticed there was a big uproar concerning the ambulance, and I noticed at that time how many full-time firefighters we have in this town, and I believe even with the cuts we're currently at 10. I think that's a bit excessive for a town of this size. Perhaps they could go to a core of, say, 3 or 4 full-time and then use volunteers for the rest. And another item where you could probably raise some money, as I understand that the boat or yacht club down at the waterfront only pays about $100 a year per boat shed. Perhaps that could be doubled or even tripled. That is prime land.
Thank you for your comment.
Certainly the change of the fire department has brought to forefront the building up of auxiliaries. The firefighters under the new chief have agreed that they would build up the auxiliary members, which will also get paid per call out. I believe you'll see that the firefighters believe they need the 10 to operate a 2-man shift. And we're down to 2 men and just, in some cases, 1 on a shift.
We'll come back to the boat question in a second. We've got another caller. Good evening, Nelson Nightline.
Yes, I've just joined the program now. I just wanted to know about a secondary parkade
or if there's plans, any future plans to develop secondary parkade or possibly paving behind the Civic Center. Is there any possibility for that happening?
Okay, thank you.
I guess a quick answer is that a year ago, Council passed a motion that all monies collected from the meters, parking meters, would go into a reserve fund to look at off-street parking. Mr. Moseley can tell me how much that's up to now, but all collections from and fines that are collected through that system go.
The parking meters.
Parking meter money, not the fines.
The fines run
Yes,
the parking department.
We have looked at the Civic Center. It's still one of our only recreation fields that minor soccer and senior soccer can play on at this point, until we have developed more fields. Other than our major one on the lake, I guess, that it'll remain there, but it's certainly being looked at.
Maybe we can just go back to the previous caller's questions about our question about the boat rental.
I don't have an answer for you. We have been questioned by several people on why we have such a low fee. They maintain those boathouses. We don't do a thing to them. They're a private club, and they're using water lots. They're not using land.
I guess the city leases that property from the federal government, so we basically charge what
the lease costs.
Lease costs, and that's the only money we do get from them actually is in taxes, and they pay the same tax rate as the business does uptown.
I'm just going to remind our viewers that this show will be rebroadcast on Friday at 11 a.m. and on Sunday at 8 p.m. if you want to watch it again. We'd also like to hear from you, our viewers, with any suggestions on other shows you might want to see. The address for Shaw Cable is 613 Ward Street, Nelson, V1L 1T2. The last caller brought to my mind is recreation vehicle facilities. We have that one little campground. When we have the Bonspiel and other activities like that, you use the rec center's field. Wouldn't that be a way of generating revenues to open up somewhere else, a rec center place with the tourism focus that we have here in Nelson?
Yeah, we've had a lot of pressure over the last 10 years to increase that. We've actually asked private business to find us a business to come in and open up an RV park, and you'll find in a lot of communities that's the way it's done. We don't have the money to go out and build an RV park right now.
The cost of setting it up?
It'd be very costly.
Okay. We just have about a minute to go. If we might have one more call. Again, the number to call is 354-4200. On air is Mayor Bill Ramsden and City Treasurer Lloyd Moseley. We'll be on again in 2 weeks from now. Another question?
No, I just want to thank both the guests for taking the time to come down this evening. I know your deliberations last Saturday must have been difficult.
No, they're ongoing every day. I would like to thank you for hosting the program and letting us be here. Council's taken a big chance and gone as open as we can, invited the public to everything we can. The official community plan that people just got in the mail is another way. We've had a public meeting in Rosemont. We'll have more this year. Remind everybody that council meets at 1:30 on Tuesday at L.B. Rogers School as part of Government Awareness Week.
Great.
Thank you, Mayor Ramsden. We got 5 seconds
Thank you,
to go.
Lloyd.
Good night.
Good, thank you.